Holy Wild Birth is a podcast embracing the reclamation of giving birth rooted in God's original design, undisturbed.
Here, we share homebirth stories highlighting God's presence as the great midwife, as well as conversations about all aspects of a holistic, spirit-led childbearing year, from the perspectives of myself, traditional midwife Lauren Hall, of Rooted in Eden Private Membership Association,
and me, holistic birth keeper and photographer Brooke Collier of Sister Birth. Together, we are co-founders and facilitators of Hearth Mother Journey, where we are raising up the next generation of holy wild birth keepers.
To choose a holy wild birth journey is to consecrate all of your decisions unto the Lord and reclaim creation unadulterated by centuries of human attempts to control and improve upon what God has called good.
Please remember that birth is not a medical event, but a natural process, and we are not your care providers, so this should not be taken as medical advice.
Hey, welcome to our FAQ series. I've got a question here for you. I'm going to go ahead and just read it off, and then we're going to jump right in. So the question is, I'm clear on my birth plan and my role in my home birth, but how can I help my husband get clear on his role in home birth?
Yes, this is a good one.
It is.
A common one because, let's be honest, most of the birth prep materials out there are definitely aimed at the mother as the primary audience. And I mean, some will do some elements for husbands too, but there's definitely not as much out there. Even Embrace Birth Journey does have dad sections, but there's not many dedicated to men resources out there at this point in time. So what do we tell the families we serve about this? That's the question.
That is the question. So I especially really love to actually have a time that dad is with, in on this conversation and just like speak to him. And so that is my, like, when it's coming up for her, that's the first thing I was like, okay, let me sit down with you and him and, let's get cleared together. And so that would be my first, if you have a midwife and she doesn't offer that, I would encourage you to do that. Like, have this conversation with anybody who's on the birth team with you.
Yeah.
So that you guys can all get really clear on the role and include the doula, etc. But first it's like, okay, what do you want from him? I think you're gonna have to define that first. What are you envisioning? Because there's not a right or a wrong role for him to fill. And doesn't mean anything positive or negative about your marriage if you want it to be a woman-centered thing or if you really want your husband there. But what's going to be most beneficial for your marriage is to have that clearly defined, have that communication. Yeah. Do you, when you're sick, do you lean in on him or do you kind of like recluse away? Like, how do you already work in your marriage, realize that your birth is not going to radically make your relationship dynamic different? Like, so What do you want? What are you going to lean into? How does he normally support you? How do you normally want him to support you? And then give him that, like, tell him, I'm going to need these things. Oftentimes I tell dads this. Most men are very wired to want to do a task list, to fix, to do. And that's a beautiful thing. And it's very much needed. But this is a very feminine space, in case you didn't know, right? And so there is going to be a few things, and it might be really beneficial to have that list to know what, what things you're going to pull out or how to set up the birth pool and all of that. But there will come a time when everything is done, but the birth is not. And you're still going to have to wait in that with her. And, you guys determine like where you will be in the home in that time, whether you're going to be there holding her and supporting her and following that or whatever that looks like for you guys. But there will come a time when there's nothing for you to do, that you just have to be in it. And it can be uncomfortable if you're not prepared for that. Where do you see yourself? Where does she see yourself? Write that separately, then come together and see where the discrepancies might be. What does he already think the birth is going to look like? What do you think the birth is going to look like? Where do you need to come into unity on that? And where do you maybe need to adjust some expectations or paint a different picture for him so that he knows what his role is? And then always tell dads, your role, in my view, I think across the board, especially if we're talking to Christian families, your role is first to be an intercessor in this room. You are
Mhm.
called to be the protector, both physically and spiritually, of your wife and children. And so your role is 100% to be praying over your wife and your child, period. Like that is your number one space. You are her protector. You know your wife more intimately than anyone else. So watching for what is she needs, looking at where is she needing comfort, where, being able to make sure that you know your house, like where's the food at, where's the snacks that she's going to be reaching for, being more familiar with your kitchen than than me, or like know where
Mhm.
those things are, know where the stuff is, and how we can find towels, or all of that is going to be some of that, like more practical things that are going to be really helpful. But ultimately your first and foremost role is always going to be protector, and that's to guard
Mhm.
her space, to protect her from anybody that's not supposed to be in that birth space, to pick up on uncomfortable, if there's any like dynamics in the family that I might know about, talking with them, like, okay, that such and such is going on with her sister. Like, how are we going to protect her from that? So those kinds of things, like, again, it's just going to get personal as how do you protect her? How do
Mhm.
you, and you have to know her birth plan and her wishes and what are the things that she needs protection from
Right.
in order to really fully step into that. So yeah. And then sometimes like we talk about his role in a transfer, what
Mhm.
that could look like, and that he is her first and foremost advocate in that space as the one who can make actual medical decisions. Um, but ultimately it boils down to you're the protector, like guard the space, guard her. No, and you have to, in order to do that, you have to know what she wants.
That's great. I probably don't have a lot to add to that because I say most of those same things in my own words.
Yeah.
I think one little phrase I picked up somewhere along the way that I like to share with dads too, and again, this is a conversation when he's in the room. I'll look at him and say, you know your wife better than most people, than anyone. I know birth better than you do. And together, we can be a really great team in supporting your wife. Because sometimes dads feel like they don't maybe know the birth process well enough to be helpful or
Right.
useful, but that's not
Yeah.
actually what they primarily need to
Not
know.
needed to know that.
Mostly they need to know her and how to respond to her when she's
Yep.
hurting or flipping out or losing it. Like what does your woman
Right.
need when she gets scared, when she wants to run away, when she's struggling? And you
Mhm.
know how to ground her, hopefully, and what that takes. And you probably have a special way of being heard by her, that and special language even that the two of you have developed that I don't necessarily have with you.
Right.
And yes, we're spending all this time together prenatally so that I do know her well and can hopefully anticipate and read her, but I don't have that history that he has.
Yeah.
So I just like to point out to him that's so important. Nothing can replace that. No
Exactly.
one can replace that.
100%.
Yeah. And I had another thought come up and I'm going to forget what it was. Yeah. I guess the other thing I would just say is like being present matters, even if you don't feel like you're doing anything. And I know that, again, that's hard because you
Mhm.
want to like fit the hose to the shower head for the water birth and get the
Uh-huh.
trash bags and all those practical things. And again, thank you for doing that. That matters. But just your willingness to be present, she will feel the energy of your solidness in the room.
Mm.
So even if you're not saying much and you're just sitting there quietly and maybe holding her hand, in some cases, that's all that's really needed. You definitely don't need to like get into coach mode.
Right.
Come on, babe, you've got this. You're doing it. I've heard some dads do that. That's
Yeah.
usually doesn't land very well.
Not normally.
So you're not a coach. You're a rock like presence.
Yeah.
And I like to talk with dads too about how much their words have an impact, especially in transition. Like every word that comes out of their mouth during that time when she's at that, I want to give up, I don't want to do this anymore point, weighs really heavily coming out of his mouth.
Yes.
And so, like, really think about your words there, use them carefully, and know that you expressing confidence in her and belief in her and your support of her in that pivotal, critical moment can be the difference sometimes between her pushing through or giving up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
know your words
For
have
sure.
weight. Choose them carefully.
Yes. 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 So good.
Yeah. And also, part of your role is actually to stay rested and nourished. Like,
Mhm.
especially if it's a longer birth, the protective part of you that sees her working so hard and struggling might want to be like, I'm going to hang in there with you. I'm not leaving your side. If you don't rest, I don't rest. But you need to know that she has certain hormones coursing through her body that are giving her an amped up supernatural ability to do that work. And you don't have that part. So you don't have the benefit of that hormonal cocktail in the same way. So
Yeah.
it's okay and even needed for you to tap out and take a nap or go in the other room and have some food, maybe brush your teeth before you come back in, especially if you ate onions or garlic.
Right.
Don't get in her face and breathe with her if your breath is bad. Some women get really offended by the food smells on their partner's breath in labor, so just be mindful. But you do need to eat and you do need to sleep.
Yep.
And that's one
Rotate
reason that
with
you
your
have a birth
team.
team.
Yep. Rotate with the team.
Because you want to
Because
be there when it
honestly,
matters, like when she's pushing and when the
when
baby comes out and she needs your care postpartum. If you're beat and you're
yes.
passed out on the couch, you can't be who she needs you to be in that moment.
Right. Yeah, because where you're really going to shine is postpartum. I mean, like, yes, she might lean on you really heavily in birth. Again, every relationship is a little different. And some women are like, you need to be right here next to me. And like I told my husband, he needed to just leave his arm with me for it. Like, if you could just go get the midwife, but leave your arm, that would be great. It's like, so we might ask you completely impossible situations, things. We're sorry. We're doing impossible things right now. But, you roll with the punches, be where she needs you to be while taking care of yourself. Because ultimately that postpartum period, when she's tucked into bed and she's done the work and it's time for a rest, there's probably going to be a lot more in the house, especially if you have other children to be taken care of. You're going to want to be able to rest as much as you can too, so that you can have your A game in the postpartum when she really needs that support. So one thing that came up for me as you were chatting too, when you said something along the lines of like, hooking up the hose to the shower head and all, and those kind of prep ahead of time are those things that are the practical tasky things. Like I would say prep ahead of time. Make sure that you know that hose fits what faucet, and like that you have the length of hose that you need, or that where the baby's, the baby items are, or the things that she wanted, the playlist. Know what her playlist is. If she has a playlist, know what candles she want lit. Know the things that matter to her, where her affirmations are. And, like if she's putting them up on the wall, that's where she wanted it, like know those things so that if labor does happen before you are ready for that, you can set those things up. And she, like it should be on you that you can easily implement for her while she is having a baby, instead of going, I need to get these affirmations up and now I'm contracting and let me hang them. Like he can do that. Let him know what those are and what the things that matter to you, all the little details, so that he can implement really well and know that hoses fit where they are and you have the right adapters and you know how to set up the birth pool and you're not fiddling with liners and confused about, like, do a dry run the things, know what you're doing so that day of can run smoothly.
And also just know that you have an amazing opportunity here. The way that you show up for your wife with intentionality and presence and strength in her labor and birth of your together baby has a ripple effect into your marriage. It has the possibility of really raising the trust levels between the two of you, of making her feel even more safe and secure in your love and in your marriage, and increasing your connection because you both are working together in this thing. It can really deepen your bond. She will leave her birth either feeling overwhelmed with gratitude for how you showed up for her, or possibly, unfortunately, on the flip side, really disappointed and feeling unseen and uncared for. And you get to choose which way you want that to be. And if you do it well, like it pays dividends.
It does. It does.
This part, I just wanted to say one last thing. We can edit this out later if we need to. But I also like to tell men that, unlike women, for most of human history, men have not been allowed in birth spaces. It has been strictly a feminine space. Like men are kept out, actively kept out. So that kind of ancestral or like cellular knowing of how to be with birth might not be there for you. It might not feel natural and there's good reason for that. Like there's nothing wrong with you if this feels like foreign territory, if it feels kind of unapproachable, if you even have this feeling of like, I shouldn't be here. There's good reason. So there's no shame, and women need to hear this too. No shame on men who struggle with that. For whom this feels like a stretch. And we have to be careful, women, not to shame our husbands and just receive their efforts in trying to learn a new way of being with birth that their dads or grandpas probably never would have even attempted. And I have worked with a couple of couples who mutually agreed that it was so much that way that it would be better for both of them if he wasn't in the room. And he
Yep.
did more like what dads did in the 90s. And he waited in a different part of the house or in the workshop or was outside in the yard, and that can be okay too, as long as it's mutually agreed upon.
Yeah.
And you were you can still care for your wife in a meaningful and significant way around her pregnancy and birth and postpartum, even if you're not in the room when the baby's born, as long as, again, that's an agreement you have. And she still experiences your love and care in other ways.
Yeah.
So I don't think that has to be off the table
as
an
not at
option.
all. I think that's really, you said that way more eloquently and more in depth. But that's where I wanted to kind of, where I was trying to start of like, set your expectation. What is actually needed? Where do you need to be? Where do you not need to be? There's no shame in that. So, but I think ultimately you have to, in order for that to go well for all involved, you have to set those expectations so that you can both be in agreement on what's needed, what's expected, and where you guys feel comfortable being.
So you matter, dads. You do.
Yes, we do. Deeply. All right. Well, we'll see you in the next one, I guess.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Holy Wild Birth. We hope that you were genuinely encouraged, inspired, and challenged by what you heard today. If you're loving what you hear, please make sure that you share it. Leave reviews. That helps other mamas find this content as well. And don't forget to read the show notes, okay? Because that's where you can find our email address if you want to reach out to us and start a conversation. It's also where you'll find free offerings as well as invitations to work with me and or Lauren. We can't wait to get to know you. See you next week.